Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
Dennis Lang.
And this week, we have a treat. Well, I mean, it's a treat for you and me, man. I don't know about the listeners, but, no, this week, we are going to the Ambler Theater.
Field trip.
Yes.
We get to leave the house. Whoa.
Yeah, it's been a long pandemic, and we have been to the movies over the time, but yeah, we don't go as often as we used to. There frankly aren't as many movies as we used to go to.
I guess the last movie we saw was Elvis, right?
Last movie in the theater? No. Nope.
Oh, Nope.
Yeah, we saw Nope. Yeah. But yes, tomorrow night, which for us will be August 11th, and you'll be hearing this this episode comes out on August 18th, so it will have already happened, obviously.
Yeah.
We are going to the Ambler Theater. They are a movie house in Ambler, Pennsylvania that does, like your art house movies and smaller films, but they also are a, what do you call it? Like a revival house?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll say that. So they'll show old movies all year. They have especially what they call Hollywood Summer Nights, where they show the kind of stuff you would see on TCM. And they also have a program called Retrograde, which is stuff like the movie that we're doing this week, which I haven't even mentioned yet.
What could it be?
It's episode 70, Rock and Roll High School.
Yay.
I love the Ramones, but I've never seen this movie.
Now, is this Roger Corman?
I think he produced it. He did not direct it.
Okay.
I'm not sure who directed it. And I know that the Ramones were not the first choice for the band.
Someone weird.
Yeah, it was somebody off the wall that...
It's like Cheap Trick or something.
Oh, that could be.
Like it was.
That's less off the wall than I was expecting.
Like it was like a rock band, but it was like, really?
Yeah, not somebody that would, result in the walls of your school being torn down or whatever happens. I don't actually know what happens in this movie, obviously.
But the Ramones, that just seems obvious.
Oh, yeah, man. Teenage Rebellion high school movie where the band in question that is coming to the school that's going to make everybody flip their wigs and terrify parents is the Ramones. Actually, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the band that actually works the best for that scenario. It's one where no, this isn't just kind of a goofy joke. I mean, it is kind of a goofy joke. And the Ramones in some ways are such a strange marriage of the Beach Boys with a chainsaw. I don't know how else to think of it. This is the same. This is the band that could have on the same record. I Want to Be Your Boyfriend and 53rd and 3rd. The Ramones are sniffing glue and writing love songs to their girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's the perfect sort of teenage juvenile delinquent dirtbag, and sincerely though.
Yeah.
That's the best part. There is something sincere in all of that. They're this kind of perfect American band.
Was it Patton Oswalt that pointed out that Sha Na Na was like the original punk band? Or...
No, I think it was John Hodgman.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it was John Hodgman was talking about how if you watch that that Sha Na Na performance at Woodstock, it's amazing. And he's right. It is amazing. Go back and watch it because they're basically playing doo-wop songs as fast as they possibly can. And there is a very clear through line from that to the Ramones. And I mean that as a compliment. It's awesome.
They just seem they want to get out of there, kind of.
They're just playing as fast as they can because they're like, what are we doing here at 6 a.m?
Why did Jimmy bring us here?
I love their marriage of just the most primitive sounding rock and roll with this weird sunny through line in some of it that just doesn't make any sense. There's a weird joy in the music that shouldn't be there.
How many spoken lines do you think Johnny will have?
Oh, hopefully none.
I could just see them giving him a script and him just glaring at them.
Yeah. I do wonder how much the Ramones are actually in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I
who
realize
knows?
this is just the hook to get me in.
Yeah.
And it's working. I am very much the fish on the line, but yeah, I have no idea how much actual Ramones are in this. I have no idea if they have any lines. I'm sure they have, all of the line reading of. Well, we saw them on The Simpsons.
One of the best Simpsons guests.
Oh, it is
ever.
one of my favorite moments ever on The Simpsons, and that's saying a lot. No, so I don't know what happens in this. I know that it's kind of a take on teen exploitation films. I think it's kind of the way that John Waters was doing throwbacks to 50s films about juvenile delinquents or melodrama or things like that. This is the same sort of idea. This is supposed to be a throwback to those 50s juvenile delinquent movies like the stuff that Mamie Van Doren would be in.
Now, was Grease out at the time?
Yes.
So maybe they were just trying to cash in on Grease.
Oh, I'm sure that was again, if I remember correctly, Roger Corman produced this, and there's nothing that man liked more than cashing in on things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I assume it's kind of a punk rock updated version of the juvenile delinquent films like the 50s and 60s, and they shoehorn a band in there, but the fact is it's a real band, and that which sometimes happened in those movies, but I'm just excited that it's built around a real band.
Did we see one? It's like called like Girl School or something.
Oh yeah, I love Girl School.
Yeah, it's on like Mystery Science Theater.
It's like Girl School or Girl Town or something like that. It's
that.
Mamie Van Doren. That's exactly the kind of movie I'm thinking about.
I hope
Yeah,
so.
that's one of those movies that we've watched the MST3K version, but it's fun by itself.
Sure.
But I feel like this is kind of playing off of those types of films. Like rock bands would just be like thrown into the background of a movie, or would be just like there for what I think about there's a whole subplot in That Thing You Do, if you remember, where they when they're in Hollywood, they're kind of recruited to be the background band in a beach party movie.
I don't remember that. Yeah, I've only seen that movie once, so I don't really.
I have it on DVD.
Yeah,
with plus the director's cut.
You think about it a lot.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
And R.I.P. Adam Schlesinger, but you wrote one of the best pop songs of the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And I could listen to that song over and over again, and I have. But yeah, I can't think of too many examples from the last 20 years where it's been a thing, where you have a band show up in a movie in that way. So, I'm kind of excited to see a type of movie that they don't make anymore. And really, who would you even make it about? I mean, Beyonce's going to star in her own movie.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that. BTS. So yeah, I am so excited, and so we're going to see this in an actual theater on 35 millimeter film. We're going to be in a crowd of people. So yay COVID, but I really want to do this. I mean, look, we can wear masks. It'll be fine.
If this is how we get monkeypox, okay.
Wait, what is happening at this movie that you're getting monkeypox? Well, okay, well, hey. So yeah, I am very excited. We're recording this a day ahead of schedule because, not at the movie theater, obviously. So, yeah, I can't wait.
All right.
Rock, 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 roll high school. Well, I don't care about history. Rock, 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 roll high school. 'Cause that's not where I wanna be. Rock, 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 roll high school. I just wanna have some kicks. I just wanna get some chicks. Rock, 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 roll high school. Well, the girls out there like me and rock, rock.
You know what is great?
What?
This movie.
It was.
I loved it. My God, where to even begin? The film is pretty straightforward. It is a camp take on teen exploitation films from like the 50s and 60s that Roger Corman, of course, made a bunch of or was involved with. Yeah, basically he wanted to do a high school movie, something to do with teens, but something that had to do with music.
Which, of course, means disco.
Yeah, what was this originally going to be called?
I think Disco School. Just Disco
God,
School.
that is a terrible title.
Yeah.
And look, I like disco. I love disco. That would have just been a completely different movie. Probably also like a fun movie, but just a different film entirely.
They looked at Cheap Trick.
Yeah, they looked at a bunch of different artists. I think
Todd Rundgren.
Todd Rundgren, Jesus,
Very
why
hard
would you?
to see.
Yeah, look, I'm not a Todd Rundgren fan at all. When I found out he was from Philadelphia, I was bummed out. I'm just not into him.
He's no Robert Hazard, is he?
No. Oh God, remind me who Robert Hazard is.
Escalator of Life. We're riding on the escalator of life.
No.
We're shopping in the human mall. Come on,
For what?
We're shopping in the human mall.
No.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, that sounds like a human rights violation. I don't know what that means.
Escalator of life.
Look, no.
It's like 80s guy.
I have no idea who that guy is. I've never heard that song.
It's great.
I'm pretty sure you're making fun of me.
No, I'm genuinely excited to talk about Robert Hazard.
Yeah, well, this is all going right over my head.
He
Was he a guy in the Hooters?
No.
See, I don't know.
But is contemporary though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how old I was?
Young.
Mm-hmm. I was probably 4 or 5 whatever you're talking about came out. I have no idea who Robert Hazard is.
So anyway, Todd Rundgren.
Yeah, totally, totally not into that idea.
Yeah.
And then they looked at like Cheap Trick, and for whatever reason couldn't get them.
I think it was scheduling.
Yeah.
I think for both of those it was scheduled. Like I
Yeah.
guess there was initial planning, but it just couldn't work.
And I think at one point they looked at Devo.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Devo just didn't work out either.
Well, I think there it was like, well, Devo has so much of their own thing.
I was going to say, Devo has the wrong vibe for this because the whole idea is that she's in love with the Ramones.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine being in love with Devo in that way. Because she at one point has a fantasy sequence that has what I'm sure off screen would have been a gangbang with the Ramones.
And she loses clothes throughout the
well, that's my
fantasy thing.
point.
Yeah.
That's my point. She loses clothes throughout the fantasy, so I'm just kind of like, obviously it's implied that something is happening off screen.
Yeah.
That I can't see putting that vibe with Devo in the same way. Like that doesn't make sense at all. No, not at all. Yeah, so they just ended up with the Ramones because I guess they were available. And
another was Van Halen. And
now Van Halen, that
I
would
can
have
see.
worked. Yes.
Yeah.
Like that would have been a different movie, but not an entirely different
Not
movie.
that different.
No, and actually Van Halen would have been kind of an interesting choice too.
Yeah.
But I think making it the Ramones, it makes a lot of sense for where this movie goes, and I think it kind of determined how this movie ended.
So there was a sequel to this?
Yeah, in like 91. I never saw it, and I heard
Is the Ramones in it or no?
No, I don't know who's in it.
I'm just saying, if you had done a sequel in like 1984 with Van Halen, that would have been perfect.
That I would have watched it. Yeah, well, yes.
Pre-Sammy.
No. You definitely want David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you don't want him in the high school.
No.
Maybe they pitched it to Van Halen, and Van Halen was too into the idea.
Yeah.
Like, okay, never mind.
It's interesting that this is a movie that kind of, leans into a certain salaciousness, but I think it's a certain, like, it's too good-humored to, except for, like, the body inspection parts.
Yeah.
Those right. Although those guys are the villains.
Yeah.
Like, we'll get to that. Okay, so they ended up with the Ramones because the Ramones were on Sire, and I don't know, one AR guy talked to another AR guy, and that's how the Ramones ended up being in this.
I think they got paid, what, $25,000?
Split 4 ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot.
And they had to, like, play shows just to afford the hotel.
That's pretty punk rock.
Roger Corman, man.
Yeah. Roger Corman. Okay, here's the thing. Number one. So Roger Corman was the executive producer. He's the guy who said, let's make a teensploitation movie in 1979, just like I used to do back in the 60s.
Yeah.
And you know what? Fair enough. He is extremely important to the history of film. On the one hand, he is a total schlockmeister. It's all bargain basement, low budget movies, biker films, and teen movies, and horror movies. He actually made some great movies. I love his Edgar Allan Poe series he did with Vincent Price.
They're amazing.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
They are awesome. He made stuff that's actually kind of important to film, like The Wild Ones, is it? Or no, Wild Angels.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wild Ones is the Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
The Wild Angels with Peter Fonda. It's an early biker movie. And it paved the way for then Easy Rider to be made. He's important not just because of the kind of movies he made. And some of them are the type of stuff that you would see on MST3K. I mean, this is the stuff that runs on a Saturday night on your UHF station. They're not necessarily great films, although some are. He also is very important because he took a lot of guys under his wing. So you wouldn't have the American New Wave without Roger Corman. He's the one who gave guys like Coppola and Scorsese and Jonathan Demme their break. Because of him, American cinema and then world cinema blossomed after the fall of the studio system. Okay?
And the reason he got those guys is he got them cheap when they first came out of film school and that kind of thing.
And because he did everything cheap and dirty, they learned how to do stuff cheap and dirty. Mm-hmm. And because they learned how to do that, they were able to revitalize American film when the studio system was kind of falling under the weight of its own excess. Okay, so Roger Corman's very important. He's also still alive. He's 96 years old. He's still kicking. When a lot of guys have died off from that era, it's like him and Kenneth Anger are the only guys still alive. Seriously, it's amazing.
Bad taste can keep you going.
Exactly. You even said that at one point, bad taste keeps you alive. So Dennis and I, we're gonna live forever.
Yeah.
Roger Corman, he decided, let's do this. This was in the late 70s, and he just saw an opening because Grease was a big deal. And the whole idea of Grease is that it's a riff on 1950s culture. It's the same thing, in the pre-show we talked about Sha Na Na. And it's the same thing where people in the 70s were looking back at the 50s and in the late 60s. It was kind of there was this whole looking at the world before basically the Kennedy assassination. That's a real that is a real demarcation line, the Kennedy assassination in American culture. And it's not just because it's Kennedy and the president getting shot, although that's a big deal. Yeah. But there is that sort of, it just acts as this sort of caesura. Because here's the thing, right after Kennedy gets shot, the Beatles come. And American culture does change from that moment onward, okay? So that you then have this moment where you look back to things like the 1950s, and you look back to biker movies and hoodlums in leather jackets. And so you have things like Sha Na Na and Doo-Wop and Happy Days and Grease, okay? And you also have the Ramones.
Yeah.
The Ramones are as much a part of that as anything else, right? So it makes sense in a weird way that the Ramones end up being the band that this movie focuses on.
Right.
It's not what they set out for, but they got the right band, even though they didn't know they were getting the right band.
Yeah.
Because what the Ramones are, they're as much a reflection of 1970s interest in the 50s and nostalgia and a certain type of culture as they are, an outgrowth of the New York punk scene.
So are they punk?
Oh, what?
No, I mean, is this movie punk? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, so okay, now
because we've been talking about how Hollywood kind of dances around punk.
Oh yeah.
And it's just kind of like a word. It's just like a different hippie.
Yeah.
As far as Hollywood is concerned.
Well, how do you define punk?
I don't.
Yeah, I know, right? That's the question. Yeah, I mean, to what extent is punk just an aesthetic, and to what extent is it a stance? Sometimes it's a political stance, sometimes it's left wing, and sometimes it's right wing. To what extent is punk just the outgrowth of the Andy Warhol factory, Velvet Underground? We are rejecting the flower power generation and all of that stuff as nonsense, and we're embracing kind of grittiness and the dark side of humanity and the arts and culture in New York City. If you're saying that's what punk is or originally was, a rejection of hippies and reaching back to something a little harsher and darker. Leaving aside the fact that the hippies got dark with the whole Manson thing, but if you're going to take the dominant culture view of flower children and all that and say, no, I'm not that, then the Ramones absolutely are punk. I
guess what I'm saying is that punk feels like this thing that was put on them, and they've always been like, well, we're ourselves. You can call us what you want.
Well, but that's all of the New York bands.
Yeah, but I
like
feel
that
like
whole first wave of New York bands that were labeled punk. Think about who they are. Okay, you've got the Ramones, which are basically juvenile delinquents singing about drugs and wanting a girlfriend.
Yeah.
You have Television, which is essentially a jam band. I mean, they're amazing. I love Television. But you don't make Marquee Moon if you think you're a punk band, right?
Right.
Although they looked like a punk band. They're dressed in like flannel shirts and safety pins holding them together. If you look at Television, they look like a punk band, but they don't sound like one. You have Patti Smith, who's basically a poet. Talking Heads, which is like an art group who eventually just start taking on like a bunch of Afro pop. And then you have Blondie, which is Blondie.
Yeah.
Which is not punk at all. I don't even know what to classify them as. So like those are your 5 big ones. I mean, leaving aside like the New York Dolls, who actually predate all of them.
Yeah.
But would you call the New York Dolls punk? Yeah. They call them proto-punk now. But of course the New York Dolls are punk, and you don't have the New York Dolls, then you don't have the Ramones. The New York Dolls are doing the same thing, only with more camp, I guess, than the Ramones.
Though I did see Dee Dee say this one thing that basically Joey is what punk is.
Yeah.
'Cause he said that everyone was trying to be like David Johansen of the New York Dolls.
Uh-huh.
And he said, but David Johansen was trying to be Mick Jagger.
Yes.
Whereas Joey Ramone was so completely unique.
Yeah.
He really is just his own thing.
Should we talk about the movie instead
Yeah.
of like talking about the Ramones as much? Because I mean, it's
Sure.
important, but let's talk about the movie for a second. So like the whole idea of this movie is you've got Riff Randall, a student at Vince Lombardi High, and she is the world's biggest Ramones fan, or at least she thinks she is. There is apparently a groupie who puts herself ahead of her, and they have a
what was it?
fight.
Tina Valentine, is that her name?
I think so.
Yeah.
She is just this wonderfully self-possessed character who is not at all worried about school, does not bat an eye when the principal says that this is going to go down in your permanent record, because she knows there is life beyond high school. She has a whole speech about this. This is not where your life ends. There's a whole world out there. Do not worry about what happens to you in high school. You'll be fine.
And her world is writing a song for the Ramones.
Yeah,
Writing songs for the Ramones.
I was going to say, she has a whole packet of songs,
Yeah.
and all she wants to do is see the Ramones when they come and play her town and get her songs to them, because she thinks she can be a songwriter.
Yeah.
The film credits her with writing Rock and Roll High School, which is a great song. And so the idea is that like if she can get to this concert, she can get to the band and she can give them her songs. And she is absolutely in love with this band in a way that, I mean, to be honest, it's in a way that a lot of young people fall in love with a band,
Yeah.
especially like girls. If you get into a rock band, you do kind of form that weird kind of romantic attachment to the artists. God knows I did it.
And it's amazing that these 4 brothers, the Ramones brothers. I love that she just says that. Like that's the reality of this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And this movie is not based in reality.
Oh, God,
There's
no.
a lot of just silly things.
But that's what's great about it. Like,
People will like just kind of fire finger guns and you'll hear gunshots.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And
I mean, look, this is a movie where it takes place mostly in this high school, and the boys' room has a stall that is cordoned off with what is the character's name again?
Oh.
Eagle Heart or something like that.
something like that.
You have, I mean, you remember how on Happy Days, Fonzie, he had his office in
Eagle Bower.
Eagle Bower.
Yeah.
Okay. He had his office in the bathroom at Arnold's. So take that and make it even more absurd, where this guy has an actual wood-paneled office in
With a secretary.
With a secretary and people lined up, and his whole deal is he's going to solve people's problem at the high school in exchange for cash. And it's absurdism, right? And what's even better is, we just brought up Happy Days. Who is playing this guy? The guy who's supposed to be like the coolest guy in school who can fix all your problems. It's Clint Howard. So Clint Howard is Ron Howard's younger brother. He is also an actor. He is like just this character actor who just shows up all the time, often in his brother stuff. But so, of course, Ron Howard is Richie Cunningham on Happy Days. So like imagine like an even nerdier, shorter, balder Richie Cunningham.
He has some scraggly
Well, he
hair
has
out
some
there.
scraggly hair in
Here.
this,
Yeah.
yes. So yeah, I mean, he's not cool in this movie, and they don't try to make him cool. I mean, he's not wearing a leather jacket. He's got like a tweed jacket or something on. You know, the idea isn't that he's cool. It's the idea is that he's a fixer, but he's a fixer at the high school. So again, this is like tropes heightened to the point of absurdism, and that's why, you know, this is a movie that is camp. It's not kitsch. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like this is a movie that knows what it is. You have this other storyline, a take on high school romance. So Riff's best friend is Kate. She is the school genius. She is going to college. She splits atoms in the basement. I mean,
She's published in Scientific American.
Exactly, yeah. So she is like a super genius.
The local DJ commented on, like,
Yeah.
oh, I saw your article in Scientific American.
But Kate is in love with the captain of the football team, Tom. What I love is that this movie like kind of takes the idea of he's the captain of the football team, which would, you know, in a lot of high schools, he's the coolest guy and he's buff. And actually he's like kind of this gangly dude who's a complete square and all of the girls roll their eyes at him. I mean, it's a really funny inversion of the idea. And Tom is played by Vincent Van Patten?
Yeah.
Who is Dick Van Patten's son. He's such a square and he's in love with Riff. Riff is not interested. So you've got this like triangle thing going. Eagle Bauer's whole thing is to try to set Tom and Kate up together because he knows that they should be together.
His statistics have figured this out.
Shouldn't be Riff, who of course should only be with the Ramones. I guess it's a foursome.
Yeah, like the first half of the movie is just complete like trope upon trope
Of,
just
like-
piled together of like high school tropes.
Yep.
Animal House is kind of like thrown in.
Oh, even the poster for this movie is a riff on Animal House.
Yeah.
So into all of this comes
Togar.
Principal Togar, who is there to, I mean, essentially install a totalitarian regime that bans rock music and enforces uniforms. It's like kind of your classic authoritarian, I'm going to, you know, ruin your high school experience type thing.
With her toadies, Fritz Gretel and Fritz Hansel.
Yeah. Yeah, those are the two hall monitors who are dressed kind of like deranged Cub Scouts. There's a whole comic Nazi undertone to their thing. But what's funny is if you look at Togar, the actress is not that much older than the people playing teenagers. Obviously, this is what...
Well, Riff is 28.
I know.
So.
This is one of those movies where a lot of the people playing teenagers are, you know, well into their 20s. It was the style at the time.
Yeah.
We brought up Grease, but then it's funny that the principal is got to only be in her 30s.
By the way, assistant principal, supposedly uncredited, is...
I don't believe this.
Is
Go ahead.
Huey Lewis. Basically playing the same character he did in Back to the Future.
But how do you know it was him?
'Cause words on the internet. It's uncredited. Like I saw the guy. I was looking for it because I saw that he was supposedly in this movie. And there's this nerdy looking guy with glasses who's wearing like a button down shirt in the beginning. He doesn't have any lines. He's just like, and
You know, you showed me a picture and you said, it's Huey Lewis. I said, Dennis, that could be any 40-year-old man. Yeah, I guess Huey Lewis is in this. Now, he was kind of an actor, though. I mean, he's in, what, Shortcuts?
yeah.
Which I've not seen, but I do want to see, and hopefully we will be able to track down for this show.
Yeah, he's not bad in that.
Really? Okay. Yeah, the only other thing I know him for is, that one scene in Back to the Future. Yeah, she installs this totalitarian regime type idea, and...
And she's been doing research at the same time.
I do like the research. She does this. There's an extended scene where she hauls in the music teacher, played by Paul Bartel, who's great in this. I love him in this.
Yeah.
He's basically the school music teacher, and his whole thing is trying to get kids to like classical music. And he's very stuffy. He's, basically Frasier before Frasier.
Yeah.
But what I like is that his character, is instantly sympathetic to the kids. And once he's exposed to things like the Ramones, he's actually fine with it. And he thinks she's nuts. He thinks the principal is crazy. Like the first time she goes off on one of her rants, he just turns to like the gym teacher and says, she's crazy, right?
You mean Miss Steroid?
Yeah, Miss Steroid. But yeah, I loved Paul Bartel in this because he kind of plays like a significant role as like the teacher who's on the side of the kids. But yeah, she brings them into like one of the science labs where she's been experimenting on mice, showing how if you play rock music at them, and depending on how loud it is, and especially the Ramones, the mice will explode. So we have a lot of mice exploding. Not like you don't actually see the mouse explode, thankfully. Although you do see this poor little mouse being held by its tail for a while.
But she has a picture of a mouse.
Oh, I love that.
A normal mouse. And
Yes.
then reveals what the mouse looked like after 10 days of listening to the Ramones, and it's got like a leather jacket and like jeans.
And it's like an
Banging its
actual
head.
literal mouse. It's a mouse that they put jeans and a leather like vest or something on. And Dennis really loved this
I
mouse.
love that mouse.
Yeah.
And we see a little bit more of him.
Yes,
Coming up.
later when we get to the concert, the mouse comes back.
Yeah.
Riff skips school to buy tickets to see the show, gets into a fight with the groupie. Kate is trying to make excuses for her at school so that Riff doesn't get expelled.
But is also trying to hook up with
But is also trying to hook up with Tom.
Tom.
And Riff goes and buys like 1,000 tickets or something, or like 100 tickets.
100
I'm sorry.
tickets for $1,000.
Right.
Yeah.
So she buys a whole bunch of tickets to give out at school, and everybody's like thrilled to go and see the Ramones. Which, I mean, to be honest, that's probably not how things would have gone in reality, but I don't care. I want to live in the reality of this movie.
Yeah. Everybody's thrilled to see Cheap Trick.
Right.
Was the original script.
Probably more realistic, to be honest. The last 2 tickets get confiscated by the principal, but the girls are able to win tickets on the radio.
This is where the Ramones finally come in.
Yes, finally the Ramones come, like, because before that, like, we've had music playing, and like the music in this movie is great. Not just the Ramones that are played in
Actually,
this.
the very first song played is Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And it's uncredited. Roger Corman got it for $500 because he had written it for another film.
That's right. I forget what movie McCartney
I think
wrote
it was
it
like
for.
Heaven Can Wait or something.
No, it was Heaven Can Wait.
Yeah.
Yes, the one with Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
If you look at some of like who is on this soundtrack, I'm just like, what would you have to pay to use the Beatles? You know, once the '80s hit, because I guess by then, like, Michael Jackson would have bought their catalog.
Yeah, that's
So-
probably what sold Roger Corman on it. Is like, oh, punk bands cheap.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. But
I'll
yeah,
play that stuff.
but the music in this movie. So like, you have Paul McCartney, you have a bunch of Brian Eno.
Yeah.
MC5 at one point, the song High School. The Velvet Underground. There is a whole thing with Riff going down the hallway listening to the song Rock and Roll, one of my absolute favorite songs of all time.
Yeah.
And then there's like kind of like stuff that's sort of obvious, like School's Out, Alice
Yeah.
Cooper. I'm kind of surprised that like all of the stuff that's not the Ramones is also great. They win tickets, they go to the concert, eventually is able to get her songs to the Ramones. So we have like a whole back, like the Ramones show up in town, and that's a whole thing. Like there are whole scenes of like the Ramones just playing music.
Yeah.
We get like a 15-minute concert, like towards the like last third of the film is just like the show of the Ramones, and it's great. I don't know how much of that music was live or not, but they are playing so fast, and they even speed up the film stock. And you can tell it's like speed up, like, you know, and it's intentional. But it's funny how I'm looking at this, I'm like, yeah, this is all sped up, but this also feels like what it feels like when you're listening to the Ramones.
So what part is sped up, did you think?
They intentionally speed up like the way that people are dancing around.
Oh, okay. Well,
there,
yeah,
there are
that's
times
sped up.
even where you can see the camera is slightly sped up in the way that like Johnny Ramone is playing guitar.
I don't know.
I'm
I
dead
don't
serious.
think
Go
so.
back and watch it. Go
Nope.
back.
Nope. No.
Yes.
I disagree.
Weirdly enough, what they don't speed up, I don't think they ever speed up Joey Ramone, but they definitely speed up Johnny. And I don't like, but no, dude, I'm serious. You don't have the sense of time that who's the drummer here?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I saw them. That's how they played.
No, that's what but that's what I'm saying. I know that they sound that fast live.
Yeah.
It's just funny that the camera speeds up intentionally to just sort of give you that sense of this is all happening very, very fast.
Agree to disagree.
You know what? So you've seen the Ramones, right?
Yeah, I saw them in 1994. It was weird. It was at the Tower Theater. So the Tower Theater, it's like this big kind of fancy theater, and it's got like seating, but they took the seats out for it. So
Yeah, I've been to the Tower Theater. It's like an old opera house.
yeah, it's very fancy looking. So they took.
I mean, they do concerts there, but
Yeah, and I saw Fishbone and Primus there with the seats. It was a very strange.
Oh, that must have been
show.
very weird.
And they were like actually walking on the seats. Fishbone, it was great.
That's pretty cool.
But so for the Ramones, I guess they thought a lot of people would be there, so they took out all the seats. As a result, like it was this huge space, and it wasn't really filled, so there was just people like milling about, wandering aimlessly. And as I told Daphne, who I went to the show with, like it felt like we were like sitting in a big trash bin looking up at them. Like it just felt strange. It was a weird vibe. But they were great. Like they came out exactly like you'd expect. 1, 2, 3, 4, and they played like 32 songs. I just looked at the set list. Like someone keeps track of these things, and they just played everything, like every possible song you could want from them. And they just played it straight through, like very fast, no stop, no like barely any talk between any of them. And they just kept staring at the crowd, just forcing these songs on us. It was great.
But it was weird because people really weren't like moshing or anything.
No, and this was 94. This is like peak moshing season. Like I once went to there's this band called the Ocean Blue, and if anyone knows what the Ocean Blue is, it's the most twee sounding music ever.
Are they the ones out of like York or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the office of the busy man. Can you hold the line?
Oh God, did they really sing English even though they're from York, Pennsylvania?
Exactly.
Oh
yeah.
no, that is you don't get more twee than doing that.
Exactly. You know, and I was at this show, and like it was a crazy mosh pit. I got kicked in the head. And I remember this kid who was like 13 was getting passed around, and I actually saw it was like Night Flight. There was like that show that would play like live shows. They actually played that particular show, and I was like, oh my God, I was at that show. And they were like baffled, like why are you all doing this? Because people just moshed everything at the time, but for some reason, like there was just too much room, and people couldn't like crowd, like nobody wanted to get monkeypox, I guess.
Anyway, this all leads up to the kids get back to the school and have a riot. What is the instigating moment? Do you remember exactly? Like why the principal? I guess the principal is going to expel everybody or something.
She's just going to expel Riff.
Yeah, they're going to expel
it's
Riff.
Just Riff. She sees Riff as kind of leading like the kids using the Ramones down the path of destruction.
So Riff brings the Ramones to her high school. They take over the school. They riot, destroy the inside of the school. And I mean, this is really mostly just a reaction to kind of the bizarre policies of Togar, the principal. So she shows up then with like riot cops. Riot Cops, led by Dick Miller. So here's the thing. I didn't get to bring this up yet. This movie was directed by Alan Arkush, but it was also kind of directed by Joe Dante. Dante worked a lot on this. Joe Dante, if you don't know, he made like Gremlins and Gremlins 2, both of which are brilliant movies. Oh my God, Gremlins 2 is actually even better than Gremlins 1. He made The Burbs, which is great. Like, go back and watch like some Joe Dante. He's amazing. One of these days I'm going to see his student film called Movie Orgy, which is just like a bunch of clips strewn together. And like Joe Dante is a guy who, when I found out he was behind this movie to some extent, it made so much sense. Chief of Police is played by Dick Miller, who is in like I think every Joe Dante movie. So the cops are going to go and storm the place under the directions of the principal, and meanwhile Kate has been in the basement essentially hooking up bombs to blow up the school. This is their way of defying the principal, who is going to try to ruin Riff's life. And they blew up an actual high school.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So the kids riot, the Ramones play, it's amazing. They destroy everything. And then at the end of the movie is they all come out of the building as if to surrender, and they blow up the whole building, and they blow up a whole high school. It's crazy. Like, you watch it, and these are actual explosions at a high school.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, it was this actual kind of, I forget what the high school, Mount Carmel, I think?
Yeah, Mount Carmel in Southern California somewhere.
Yeah, and
they blew it up.
Yeah, they just blew it up. Apparently they used more dynamite than they needed, and neighbors were freaking out.
Yeah, I bet they were. And that's really the end of the movie.
Yeah,
that's it. They blow up the high school.
Oh, and it ends with Togar like she's gone insane, and she's in a straitjacket and everything.
Yep. And that's it. Like, we don't even get like, here's what happened to them later. No, we just ended on they blew up the school. It's a perfect ending.
Yeah.
I loved this. So this is a movie. Like if you watch it, you don't go in expecting here are great acting performances. That's not the point of the movie. It's intentionally not great. I think the closest I can compare it to is Rocky Horror.
Oh yeah.
In that all of the acting is a bit arch.
Yep.
It's artificial. They're playing with teen melodrama in a winking way. So like the whole it's camp. This is camp, okay? As much as Rocky Horror is. Where that was about monster movies and sexuality, this is about high school movies and rebellion and punk rock and things like that. But it's the same sort of heightened acting style that is not going for realism.
Right.
You're not watching this for that. You're watching this with a different lens. I don't know how else to explain it. If I had seen this when I was like 13, I think it would have been my favorite movie ever.
Well, we should talk about Amy.
So we went and saw this movie, and like after our talk, we will have an interview we did with the program director at the Ambler Theater, Brendan Joyce, who we ran into while we were at the theater to watch this. So we saw this movie live. We went to the Ambler Theater in Ambler, Pennsylvania. They were showing a 35 millimeter print. It was great. We have a whole interview with Brendan after this. Before we went into the show, there were people outside, and we met a woman there named Amy, who was, I think she had driven there from like maybe New Jersey to come and see the show. And we talked, basically Dennis and I were trying to take our pictures outside because, they had the title up on the marquee and everything. So we're like, oh, let's take our picture and everything, which you probably saw it on Twitter. She was, just talking to us, and like she apparently loves this movie, and she was dressed like Riff. I did not know what she was dressed as. I feel kind of bad in retrospect, but so she was older than us, or older than me.
Yeah, there was a bunch of like Ramones, like old school Ramones fans there, just hardened criminals looking.
But there was also like other people like me there. I'm a softened criminal. No. So we met this woman, Amy, and we just started talking, and she was talking about how when she had met the Ramones. And I said, oh my God, what is this story? And they played some show in, I guess, Jersey and I don't remember where she said it was. It was somewhere North Jersey
But
that had.
It was outdoors.
It was outdoors. It was kind of like going to the Man in Philadelphia. So it was the Ramones, Jerry Harrison, and I forget what his band was. Tom Club were there, and Blondie. So yeah, this is, she went to this show, and apparently the skies just opened up and poured rain on everyone. And I don't remember how she ended up backstage. Do you remember what that was?
So she was like kind of shivering with this guy who was I guess she was talking with this guy.
It was the merch guy.
And it was the merch guy.
It was the merch guy for the Ramones. That's right. She had struck up a conversation with the merch guy for the Ramones out, at the concert. And the skies opened up, poured rain. And so apparently she was like 17 at the time. Yeah. And the guy felt bad for her and brought her into where the bands were.
Yeah, he's like, come on inside. You got to come inside. And it turns out he brought her into everyone.
Yes. Yeah. And she tells this story like because she's 17, and you have to understand this woman is very short.
Yeah.
She's definitely not 5 foot. So she's this petite little thing, and she said that she came in, she must have looked like a drowned 7-year-old because Debbie Harry took one look at her and says, "Get this girl a hot chocolate," which is such a sweet thing to say.
I
know, right? That's great. I would die. Like, Debbie Harry's the same age as my mother, and so I can almost kind of picture that, and then like Joey Ramone is just like,
that's not how I picture Debbie Harry.
No, nobody else would do that. I'm the only person in the world who
That's not how I picture Debbie Harry.
No, nobody would. Okay, that's a fair point. But it's such a sweet little moment. Like Joey took a look at her and was just like, "Oh, well, let me get you a T-shirt," and gave her like I guess like a T-shirt from like the tour shirt or something like that. Yeah. So Joey specifically gave her a T-shirt
because she was
soaking wet, and it was just like, let's get you some like dry clothes. And so she had this like wonderful story about Debbie Harry and Joey Ramone kind of taking care of her after this show, and I really wish we could have interviewed her, but she disappeared after the movie.
She was like so psyched for the movie, and her husband came, had never seen it. Like he was like, "Oh, is this a fish show?" And
he was making jokes about
and
he's definitely not a punk.
So like they were hanging out outside after the movie, and like we were all going to this bar
down the street, Forest and Main,
and because it was kind of part of this deal.
Yeah,
and maybe you heard some singing there.
Yeah, do I want to include that?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, they were walking with us, and then suddenly they weren't there.
They just disappeared. They were going to the bar with the rest of us, and like just evaporated, like ghosts.
Amy, where are you?
Please come back. I wanted to interview you.
Oh well.
This one goes out to Amy, wherever you are.
Short and sweet.
Okay, we are definitely recording. Okay. All right, so we are actually going to do an interview now. We just watched Rock and Roll High School, which, by the way, was amazing, and we'll do our take on the film when we get home. But right now, we are still in Ambler, and we are going to talk to, please tell us your name.
I'm Brendan Joyce, and I'm part of the programming team at the Ambler Theater.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. This is awesome. Both being on the podcast, but also programming the Ambler Theater. Tell us just a little bit about the theater if you have a second.
Yeah, so the Ambler Theater is a nonprofit art house theater. It's membership-based as well, and people can buy memberships and get discounts on movies through their membership. But Ambler Theater was originally built in 1928 with a Spanish colonial design. It used to be an opera house. If you ever go into the Ambler Theater, Theater 1, that used to be the only theater, and all the seats would stretch out all the way into the lobby. So it was one theater, and then around the mid-2000s, it was purchased by a theater management company that restores art house theaters called Renew Theaters, Inc., and they purchased the Ambler Theater and remodeled it and turned it into 3 theaters. So we show a lot of different films, from foreign films to art house films. Mainly, I tell people, when they ask me what kind of films you play, I'm like, we don't play Marvel, but we do play the films that you will see at the Oscars this year. And we play a lot of classic films, special repertory films from all eras, from 1920s silent films all the way up to the 1970s, and even some early 2000s now, because now that's being considered classics. And we try to do it either digital or, as in Rock and Roll High School's case, 35 millimeter.
Yeah, so let's talk about that 35 millimeter for a second. First, how did you guys track that down?
So it was interesting how kind of fell in my lap. Initially, when we were going to run Rock and Roll High School, it was going to be back in May of 2020. Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic happened, so we postponed it and wanted to save it until we could open the theater again and show it. And then the perfect opportunity when we're going to do our Retrograde series, which Rock and Roll High School was part of, where we show classic cult films. We scheduled for August, and we're like, okay, well, let's do digital. But then I was like, maybe we can find a 35 print. And lo and behold, when I was searching for 35 prints for Scream, I came across a private collector. And I saw off his old list from 2019. And when I booked Scream from him, I got his print for Scream, which we're showing in October on 35. I saw he was like, well, I have a new list of films if you want to check out. I just acquired, and one of them was Rock and Roll High School. And it said it was a very good condition. It's an older print from 1979. They didn't make a lot of Rock and Roll High School prints because it was an independent Roger Corman film. So it's very far and few between, and there's not any reprints of it. So it's legitimately going to be a 1979 print. So I was like, hell yeah, let's do it, because it's hard to find. It's a hard to find print.
Yeah, and what I really liked about this print is that it is, so yeah, it's 35 millimeter, and so you're seeing a movie on film, which is nice, but also because it's old, because it's an old print. What is it called? Red shifted?
It's red shifted, yeah. So it's a red shifted print, and this is I learned a lot from our head projectionist, Jesse Crooks, who told me who gives me a lot of. When he likes a perfect print, he will give me a lot of flack if we get a red shifted or really scratch that print. This is one I got some flack on. Not too bad. But yeah, it's an Eastman. That's that's the film print that they developed on was Eastman. A lot of films before 1982 used Eastman. And those films you'll see with Library of Congress, sometimes you have to keep those films like preserved and like not too hot, not cool temperature, like a very neutral temperature, and can barely run them. With Eastman, if they're not kept in like the most perfect condition, it will redshift and everything will look like you're on the planet Mars. And that was the case with Rock and Roll High School. So it was redshifted. It's very hard to find an Eastman print that is kept as preserved. Most of them are the Library of Congress has them, and they very rarely hand them out to people. So this was, it was a unique opportunity to show this film, even though it looks like you're on Mars. It looks like the Ramones are on Mars. Not us, but it looks like the Ramones are on Mars.
Well, what's kind of neat about that is it reminds, I'm just old enough that there are old photographs of my family that, have done the same thing. Because, again, they were using, Kodak film, and the film is, it's not that it's faded, but that the colors have changed so that everything has that red tint. And so watching this movie, it had, that extra retro feel because, it's from 1979, and... so you have kind of...
Incidentally, Mary was born in 1979. So.
Yeah, so it's perfect. It was a perfect film, for my own birth. What I liked is that there's this sort of extra level of nostalgia in watching a movie that, it's nice to watch something that's cleaned up and, has been digitally preserved and everything. But there's something really fun about, especially something when the whole point of retrograde is these are older films, but they're not from the 40s. They're from the 70s and 80s, and there's a certain nostalgia element to it because retrograde again. Having it redshifted, having it on film, and it's not just that it's redshifted, it's the fact that there are breaks in the film, and they're very small, but you can tell where it's been patched a little bit. A line gets dropped. There were times where there were lines in the one side of the screen, a green line coming down. There's imperfections in it that, I was thinking about the movie Grindhouse, and where Tarantino's trying to imitate that, and here we have the real thing, and it added an extra element in watching a movie like this, which is it's an homage to, and also I don't know, it's camp, but it's also a knowing sort of take on teen exploitation and grindhouse movies, movies of that era, but kind of knowing what it is, and so having it be dirty, having it be imperfect, it really fit the film in a way that watching a perfect reproduction would not have been the same thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I actually love the imperfections.
Yeah.
I know our head projectionist would get upset with me saying that. I've seen prints that look pristine, we've done films like Rosemary's Baby on 35, and I
was there for that.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, it looks amazing, but it was so pristine. It was so clean. And it looked amazing, but it's so pristine. I love the, especially with something like you mentioned, something like the Ramones and this teen exploitation film, a Roger Corman film.
Yes.
To see something like that, I think I said it in my little preamble before the film. It's punk rock, and this film print is punk rock. It's dirty, it's grimy, it's gritty. And for me personally, when we show our 35 prints, I like to be as close to the screen as possible. And I know that's not for everybody, where you sit there and you literally have to crane your head up. But I love getting as close to those imperfections as possible because with digital, it goes through so many processes. And with film, it's real. It was actually live and really done. It's real and it's physical, and seeing those physical imperfections blown up. It's a beautiful thing to see. And I think this was the perfect. If any film had to be red shifted and spliced to hell and just scratched up and dirty, Rock and Roll High School is the perfect film to have that.
Exactly.
So do you have a favorite part of the film or anything like that?
Yeah. What made you like? I assume since you're one of the programmers, you were like, yeah, let's do this movie, or and what is your favorite part? So like, what got you to want to do this one, and what is your favorite thing about the film?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I never saw this film back in like 2019ish when we were talking about like the 2020 retrograde. It was our former programmer Mike Camison who saw the film, and I was a big Ramones fan regardless, but I just never got around to Rock and Roll High School.
Same.
And he pushed the film, and I was like, okay, that sounds cool. I read an explanation for it, and I actually watched it before we programmed it. I was like, this is insane. I love it. It's really goofy and campy. So that was, and then after that, I just fell in love because, big Ramones fan, and then seeing Rock and Roll High School, it's like, hell yeah, let's do this. All for this. And he's a humongous Ramones fan, so much props to him for even suggesting that initially. Yeah, my favorite part, it's there's so many parts I love. I love everything with Clint Howard in it.
Yes.
He's just amazing when he pops on, and being in an audience with people when if they've never seen it before, realizing Clint Howard's in it, and then like, it's so cool.
In his special office in the boys' room.
Yeah,
Yes.
The special office of the boys. I love everything with the mice and the giant, human-like mouses. The portion, my favorite portion, honestly, is when all the when all the concert goers are coming to the concert, and the bouncer, the doorman, is like patting them all down and checking them. I think that's just hilarious because it feels like I feel like I've been to a few weird punk rock shows that there's guys like that. And the Ramones acting in it is just like terribly amazing.
Yes.
It's half terrible, half amazing. It's feel good. So yeah, there's so much about that movie. Yeah, I love.
Yeah, there's that moment where like Dee Dee is in the shower, and it's just
Yeah, it's so like, what the hell?
I love that so much. But one thing I really love in the movie is like you can see like Joey just smiling through like most of it, which just it's one of those things where it's like you wonder like, oh, what did the Ramones think of being in this? But he just seems like he's having the time of his life doing it.
They all look like all the Ramones, and especially him, are just having a great time. And big shout out to the guy who plays the police chief, Dick Miller.
Yes.
Dick Miller is like one of those unsung heroes because Joe Dante is a part of this production. So he cast Dick Miller in everything. So when he shows up at the end, it's like that extra cherry on top. And it's so cool to see a film like PJ Souls. I've only ever known her from Halloween, and seeing her in like a lead role, like really killing it. And the cinematography from Dean Cundy also did Halloween. It's like all these like weird little like, if you're a big horror fan like myself, like people like Dick Miller, Joe Dante, Dean Cundy, PJ Souls, all these like come together in this weird Ramones teen exploitation film from Roger Corman of all people. It's like the perfect storm.
Yes, exactly. Finding out the Thank you.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, finding out that Joe Dante, like I did not know going into this that Joe Dante was involved at all, and then watching, I'm just like, oh yeah, no, this makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's a if Dick Miller's in it, then Joe Tante's a part of it. And if Joe Tante makes it, Dick Miller's going to be in it. And that's all you need.
Like you're so used to like this kind of low budget, everything's like low budget, and then suddenly this amazing mouse appears out of nowhere. Like this full size mouse that's like, oh, I've got headphones on, don't worry, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, what has just happened here? It's a different movie.
It really is perfect. It's one of those movies that it fully embodies what it's trying to be, in a way that and it pulls it off, and it's joyful watching it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can't help but like have a smile on your face watching that film, and just all the weird little like bizarre jokes that they put through in the film. It's just like. It's so goofy and weird. It's just, it's great. It's great 70s teensploitation. And the Ramones, like, can't beat that. That's like the cherry, like, I said Dick Miller's the cherry on top. He's one of the cherries, but the Ramones is like the biggest cherry on top of everything. And getting those performances from them captured on, you seeing that on film, those, performances from the height of their popularity and when they were like the Ramones, like them with the burgeoning of punk rock. at that period in time. It's like amazing.
I love all the scenes with Joey just like leaning into the camera.
Yeah.
Oh, that was just.
It was just perfect.
Yep.
All right. Are you
that's
ready?
it.
Are you good?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting and talking with us. We really appreciate it. We love the Ambler Theater. We can't wait to come back. You said you're doing Lost Boys coming in October?
Yeah, we have Lost Boys coming up. We have so many cool things coming up throughout the September through November. September, we're going to have silent film accompaniment for Sherlock Jr. and the Go-To Buster Keaton films with noted pianist Ben Modell, who's like considered like the best of the best in the nation.
Absolutely.
And then a lot of cool horror films in October, a lot of them on 35, Scream on 35. Then we're going to have like a night of short horror trailers and cartoons on 35. And then October 27th, Lost Boys on 35, which I am really hype about. That's one of my favorite movies ever.
Somehow Mary has not seen it.
I have not seen it, and I actually was scheduling it for this October, so I think we're going to be back. Well, I know we're going to be back to watch Lost Boys in the Ambler Theater for a future episode, and I can't wait. Thank you again so much for this. This was awesome. Everybody, please check out amblertheater.org. And yeah, if you are in the Delaware Valley and you are looking for a place to go and see movies, please, please, please come to the Ambler Theater. So that was Rock and Roll High School, starring PJ Soles, Vincent Van Patten, Clint Howard, Day Young, and obviously the Ramones.
Yeah.
And
Huey Lewis.
No, I don't believe that was true. I truly don't believe that's true. Anyway, directed by Alan Arkush and to some extent Joe Dante.
He did like three
He did direct
scenes
3 scenes, and he also apparently worked on the story a lot.
Yeah.
I loved it. If you get a chance to see it in a theater with a crowd, oh my God, this is a perfect midnight movie. All right. You can follow us on social media. We are Mary VS Movies on Twitter, and we are Mary VS Movies on gmail.com. Please write to us with any comments, questions, complaints, or suggestions. We would love to hear from you. We are also now on Instagram, where we are, of course, Mary VS Movies. And I like to post pictures of the movies that we are watching. Let's see. We don't have a website yet, but we're working on it. But we do, however, have a Patreon. So if you go to Patreon, we are there, of course, Mary VS Movies, where you can help support the show. We are working on swag. Dennis has made a whole bunch of buttons, and they look great. And so those will be coming out soon to those of you who are patrons.
And stickers.
And I think we also have a T-shirt shop opening up.
Soon. Yeah.
Soon, yes. And hopefully soon we will also have a website. We're on all the major platforms. We are on Apple Podcasts, where you can rate and review us. We are on Stitcher and Spotify and Google Play, and you can find our RSS feed on the Libsyn website and plug it into whatever your podcatcher of choice is. Next episode, as far as I know, we finally have been able to track down a copy of One Crazy Summer, and we will be saying goodbye to summertime. It's funny because we just watched these two like high school set movies, kind of ahead of time. By accident. So next time we will be saying goodbye to summer of 2022 by watching One Crazy Summer, which I think is made by Savage Steve Holland, who made Better Off Dead.
Oh, okay.
And stars John Cusack. So I'm kind of excited about that. I assume we'll have an episode out next week. We're going on vacation soon. Hopefully there won't be too many disruptions, but we'll see. So until next time.
They're ugly. Ugly, ugly people.